you could be spending a lot of money on organic and all the good things, and it's not really being broken down and absorbed.
Right.
Then you could also look at the mucosal barrier, which is where the leaky gut, which is the kind of the parent of autoimmunity. And you can also see what stress is doing and how it's breaking your body down, how you're aging before your time. So the functional tests tell you, how things are working inside.
Welcome to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, the podcast for high achievers who want to stay sharp, focused, and full of energy despite their diagnosis. With your host, National Board Certified Functional Medicine Health Coach, Julie Michelson, where Julie helps you take your power back from autoimmunity. And now here's your host, Julie Michelson.
Welcome back to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast. I'm your host, Julie Michelson. And today I'm joined by Reed Davis, board certified holistic health practitioner and certified nutritional therapist. Reed is an expert in functional lab testing and holistic lifestyle medicine. He is the founder of Functional Diagnostic Nutrition and the FDN certification course, which has over 4,000 graduates in 50 countries. Reed served as the health director at a wellness center in Southern California for over 10 years. And with over 10,000 clients, he is known as one of the most experienced clinicians in his field. Reed serves on the advisory board of the American Natural Wellness Coaches Board and the American Association of Natural Wellness Coaches. In today's conversation, we're discussing the difference between functional health and the historic medical model. Reed shares his journey and his expertise on how we can all shift out of illness and into vibrant health. And we also discuss the FDN training program for those who have a desire to heal as well as help others do the same. Reed, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Julie. Pleasure to be here.
I'm so excited about this conversation. But before we even dig into all the autoimmunity information you can give us, I would love for you to share a bit of your journey, because like so many of us, I don't think this is what you're doing now is what you imagined you'd be doing when you were younger. But unlike most of us, it's not because of your own wellness journey that you got here. So can you just share, how did you come to create the functional diagnostic nutrition?
Yeah, there's a story there. It's been an adventure, and I have to say, you never know how it's going to turn out. But I got my first health book when I was about 19, and so and I wasn't in the health business until I was in my 40s. Matter of fact, I was in environmental law and conservation. So in the 1990s, I thought I was saving the whole planet. And I actually did very well. There's lots of ways to make money in that industry. And so we were doing great. And I started to, I saw so much damage done to the flora and fauna of the planet. And I started wondering about people. What about people? And what about me? Right. I'd had relatives that died at young ages, and I think you are familiar with that.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want that happening to me. I was already in my 40s, but my late 40s, by the time I got into this field, which is in 1999. And so I switched jobs. I just went from being the CEO of basically a recycling company to just the lowest level at a wellness center. And it was
hard to imagine.
Yeah, they brought me in as a businessman because I'd done very well. And yet the owner said, "Hey, Reed, if you want, you could take this nutrition course with me." The doctor was getting her diplomat in nutrition and said, if you go to these classes with me, I'll let you work on our patients in between classes. And you'll get your certified nutritional therapist certificate. So I jumped on that opportunity and my life changed immediately. I just fell in love with working with people. Now I'm saving people instead of birds and dogs and cats or whatever,
Yeah.
whales, and you have it in the environmental field. And so it was just a remarkable, enlightening, and joyful experience. Although the people coming in the office weren't joyful, they were miserable.
Yeah.
But my opportunity to help them became my mission in life. And so it's never changed. In 25 years, I'm dedicated to helping people find the underlying causes and conditions. Because as you know, I'm not a physician.
Right.
I didn't want to start
Me
diagnosing.
either.
Yeah. So I didn't want to start diagnosing and treating. It would have been inappropriate and maybe even illegal. Like
Right.
I want nothing to do with medical. It's what's really wrong. And all the patients were game to do what I recommended, which was run functional laboratory work. It was called alternative back then.
Right.
We didn't call it. And I've seen functional medicine evolve. It's not finished evolving,
No.
but it went from alternative to complementary to integrative, which is more. It's being accepted to functional, where now it's being championed by medical, and that's a good thing. But we were there all those years ago. I had a lot to learn,
Mm.
but I had nothing to unlearn.
Which
And,
is lovely.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I just got to run labs and look at what's really, all these, and I was trained, had amazing mentorship. And I'll wrap this up in just a sec. So with this incredible mentorship, scientists, researchers, lab directors, and lab geeks, um, I learned to find underlying causes and conditions, and it became my sole modality. I mean, the nutrition course that I took didn't work. It was just
Sure.
basically
Well, it's one
eat
thing.
this way, take
Yeah.
this for that, supplements and stuff. So, but it was the lab work that over 10 years, I ran thousands and thousands of labs, helped thousands of people, and I recognized patterns. So, in addition to the training and the mentorship I was receiving from physicians and scientists, I was recognizing my own patterns in the office. We were a busy office. Matter of fact, I loved going out and getting new ones. I started lecturing. So I did that for 10 years. And the patterns that I recognize are the foundation of what we now call functional diagnostic nutrition. When I taught my first class after 10 years, they kind of made me to start teaching other practitioners. Reed, you're doing great. Hey, you can only see so many people. Why don't you
Right.
deputize a few? And that rang a bell in my busy mind. And so the first class, and I've never looked back from then either. Just teaching became okay. I can teach this methodology, so it's a way of thinking. And along with the steps, methodology means method, steps. The ology is the way you have to be thinking. So it's a
Right.
methodology, and you have to be thinking that the body is pretty smart. You don't have to
Yes.
teach any cells what their job is. The body wants to heal itself if you give it
Amen.
everything it needs to heal and remove the interferences. So that's what FDN is. It's that and all of the protocols, all drug-free lifestyle medicine, pretty much.
Which is amazing. And I love, I just told you before we started, at some point, I want to go through the
You're
FDN
welcome.
course.
Yeah, jump in.
I'll need CEUs in next year. So,
Yeah,
you'll probably see me on the roster just because we're all always learning, but it's already so aligned with what I do.
yes,
I'm not a practitioner. I know, and we'll get into it because
sure.
I think what you hit on, the beauty of not being a physician, and I say that with love and respect for physicians. Most of my
Of
listeners
course.
know I live
Yeah,
with a physician. I work with a physician, and we love working together because I didn't have anything to unlearn, and I have the patient mindset. And so I'm going to prioritize maybe different things than a physician would. And I approach helping my clients the same way, FDN practitioners do, which is we do a load of labs up front, because there's our roadmap, right? And so, because we are, and I know you agree with this. I've heard you speak. Shockingly, we're all individual, so we have patterns.
Imagine that.
I know, it's wild. And so I go through the same thing. I just had a call even last week where somebody was like, "That's expensive," and I'm like, "It is, but you're here at my door because you haven't been helped." So, do you want to wait 6 months and trickle the labs like you would have done, with a functional medicine physician? No, you want to get better.
Exactly.
So I love that. And obviously most listeners are either have autoimmunity or autoimmune adjacent, autoimmune loved ones. Because functional diagnostic nutrition, but you're not a physician and you're not working with diagnoses, people kind of look at me like I'm crazy when I say, don't get a diagnosis. Well, then we don't have to undo your thinking. Let's talk about that a little, because I think you share that view as well. How can you help somebody if they don't have a diagnosis?
Well, they could have one from a physician. It's
Sure.
usually it's just a name or label for a cluster of symptoms.
Right.
And it might have a lab or two attached to it for confirmation. So doctors do what's called a clinical diagnosis. It sounds like this. Let's say hypothyroidism.
Right.
Because in the cluster of symptoms, that's very, very distinct. So if you list those 6 or 8 or 10 things, it sounds like hypothyroidism. Let's check. And they check the thyroid and pat themselves on the back. I found your problem. It's your hypothyroid. Here's your prescription to make up the difference.
Right.
And in our world, we call that treating the paper.
Right.
Now, it does provide relief. People will feel better. They get a little more energy and they lose a couple pounds. But then as soon as something else occurs,
which it will.
Which it does. So when you don't treat the underlying processes, disease processes and malfunctions and imbalances that are sometimes very far upstream, well, then either the symptoms will come back with a vengeance, and what do? Well, you need more medication, up your dosage, or they appear as new symptoms, which if that same physician can handle it, then it would just be, well, that sounds like low testosterone or something. So they run the test and pat themselves on the back. Yep, and now you're on 2 medications. You're on
only 2,
and you're in it. So they're still treating the paper, still using that. Now, do you get relief? You might from the testosterone get a little more libido and build a little bit of muscle and have some more energy and things like that. But it doesn't fix so we don't think that way. So to answer your question about diagnosis is that, well, I can't give one. And I don't want to, because none of our patients coming in 25 years ago wanted another darn diagnosis.
Right.
You're like, I already have 3. I don't want another one. I want to know what's really wrong. And well, I'm your guy. I was again the open book, and I had the freedom to do this in a wellness center. There was physicians there, and I had no trouble getting all the lab work that they were willing to pay for.
That's like me. Yep.
Yeah, and so it was fun. I had a great time in those 10 years helping people. And when they started to get results, like amazing results, I tell this story all the time. I hope it's okay.
Please.
If I tell it. It's one of my most popular, but I could give you 100. But this lady came, it's just with your audience, this lady comes in. She's there for some chiropractic and massage and stuff. And I would walk the patients back to the treatment room. So we had a pretty big place, and get to know them and all that. So it was about her 8th visit, I think. And I could tell she was sad. I said, hey, first name, what's going on? Oh, and she just was in a bad day. Reed, I'm just so tired, sick and tired. I'm 40 pounds overweight, and I just can't stand it anymore. And it's because of this medication I'm on for the hives. And right away I'm thinking,
Uh-huh.
okay, yeah,
Why
but
does
I
she
couldn't
get
get,
hives?
well,
Yeah.
I couldn't get a word in. She had to be heard out, and I went to
Yeah.
so I'm on this medication for the hives, maybe gained 40 pounds in 2 years, and I'm sick of it. And and she said she had just been for a checkup, told the physician how sick of it she was. And he said, according to her, ma'am, you could be fat or you can have the hives. You take your pick. And she said, well,
Ouch.
so she said, that's very depressing. And the physician said, well, I'll be happy to write you a prescription for antidepressants.
Oh gosh. Of course.
And so she was, now I understood why she was presenting so down.
Right.
But when I said, by this time we've walked her back, this is all going on in the hallway back to the treatment room. And typically I would do some trigger point therapy. It was a really good myofascial therapist, among other things. But I do some trigger point therapy, put a heat pack, and then the chiropractor would come in and do the adjustments. And we were known for that. Really, really good type of therapies and modalities and things. But when I said to her, well, first name, why didn't you ever try to find out why you get the hives? As you had mentioned. Well, her head snapped down so hard, I thought she wouldn't need her chiropractic. I thought I heard the, you know, what? And I said, yeah, let's run a test. You could run a test if you want to try, maybe, no guarantees, but maybe
Right.
find out why. So we ran some tests. We found out what she was eating and things in her environment that she needed to change, and she did. And within 9 days of my report of findings
Mhm.
on the lab work, she called her doctor and said, hey, I'm off this medication. I found out why I get the hives.
Amazing. And it's so inspiring and also sometimes frustrating and can spark a little
Yeah.
anger, which can feel change. So that's
Well,
good.
that the doctor was doing what he's trained to do, which is relief.
Right.
That's never, like relief is good.
Yeah.
Even if it has a side effect. For her, the side effect became worse than the problem, or is bad. Another 2 weeks went by, and I talked to her again, and she said that she was in the gym working out to a sweat and taking hot showers, which she hadn't done in 2 years, because even on the meds, hot showers and sweating
Would
gave her
trigger.
the hives. And she'd lost some weight,
Yeah.
a respectable amount of weight already, and man, so underlying causes, conditions, can you help people without being a physician and diagnosing? Oh, heck yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll give the disclaimer I give all the time, and I've heard you say the same thing. Western medicine is fantastic for acute care. So if you need surgery, break a bone, have an infection, like go
Yes.
to a Western trained medical
Right.
doctor.
First,
But it's
yeah.
just not designed to handle all of these chronic conditions, including autoimmunity. But there's so many of them now, and they're just, multiplying. Probably, well, not just probably, one of the reasons is, environment, like you started with. So,
Yeah.
it does all tie together. We are, absolutely affected by environment. I want to ask.
Let me add one
Yeah.
thing to it, because you touched on a very important point. Are we in competition with physicians? Not one
No,
bit.
partnership.
If you have communicable disease, you get off a plane from West Africa and your temperature is 105 and you're bleeding from your eyeballs, you're not going to call your nutritionist, FDN practitioner,
Or health coach.
health coach, or anything. Same thing with gunshot wounds.
Sure.
Yeah, and these so communicable diseases, and you got to go get checked out, because here's the definition of two backyards, medical backyard and our backyard. So when the downward spiral is really contracted, well, the observations I would make with my functional lab testing can't be capitalized on. You've got to stop the bleeding,
Right.
so to speak. Once the bleeding stopped, then we can. Then you're in the next backyard. And people were coming in 25 years ago with that, and their downward spiral wasn't It was just some long drawn out. Well, then the observations we make and the lifestyle recommendations and the epigenetic programs work, because you
Right.
have time for the body to heal. That was our original premise. The body wants to be healthy. If you have enough time, you can get over an awful lot of ills.
Absolutely. And stop that spiral of, especially, once people have an autoimmune diagnosis, again, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
If you don't handle those root drivers, you're gonna
Okay.
get a second and a third and maybe even a fourth. I had one client who had eight different autoimmune diagnoses, and she's well now. So,
Right.
I always say it's never too late and definitely never too early. I know you mentioned patterns, right? This is how the whole FDN started, was because you were able to say, like, okay, yes, we're individual, but I see these patterns. And you have fantastic acronyms. So will you share a little bit about your approach? What are you looking at? What do just.
So in the office, in a 10-year period, I ran thousands of labs and thousands of people, and I had great mentorship. Along the way, I started recognizing patterns, and most of our patients were women. They seemed to care more about their health, and they were working. They had kids that were grown, sometimes even out of the house, empty nesters kind of a thing going on. And some even had younger kids. But that was the demographic. Now, I first became a specialist in hormones because that was a big thing in the day. The drugs being used were horrible. And there was stuff going on with research there. So, and then what I realized was that you could help someone with their hormones, but what about their immune system?
Yep.
What about digestion? What about detoxification? What about energy production? So I ended up over the years coming up with this acronym, HIDDEN, hidden, and a lot of it's hidden. You have to run labs and you look at hormone balance and the immune system. So HIDDEN is hormone, immune, digestion, detoxification, energy production, and nervous system balance, the sympathetic, parasympathetic. And there's tests for everything like that. Now, here's the other consideration, though. It's that none of that's happening in a silo independently.
Yes.
We're so unique and individual. And so what I learned is that, you couldn't say, well, it sounds like hormones, or it sounds like the immune system, or it sounds like nervous system imbalance, or it sounds like a parasite, or whatever. What became important was to look at the entire constellation of healing opportunities. Those are not diagnoses. Healing opportunities are what really needs to be worked on. And here's the other thing: these causal factors, this whole constellation of causal factors, they're all having an effect on each other. And so that's why you need to know about them all. And you can start sorting it out. So what I labeled that was metabolic chaos. And so that phrase has become pretty popular too.
It has.
FDN practitioners, my graduates, all use it every day because that's the only problem that a person has to us. There's metabolic chaos. You got all these causal factors. They're affecting each other. You can't even singly measure some of those interactions.
Right.
But we know about them. And when you look at the entire constellation, you can come up with what a person can do immediately, which is where the lifestyle acronym comes in. It's not your genetics. You can't change your parents, but you were given some genetics, and what you want is genetic potential. You want to realize your fullest healthy genetic potential, and we're not all handed the same deck of cards when it comes to that.
Right.
I, for instance, will never be a NBA star.
Oh, come on, Reed.
Well, at 5'10", I'm not going to make it. So the idea is that genetic potential, though, is what you want. So if you find all these healing opportunities, you've identified a bunch of stuff, HIDDEN, and everyone can work on it all. And there's also oxidative stress. There's other things you could throw into the metabolic chaos, what's creating it and what it's resulted in, the symptoms and things. Well, when you have that approach and you know that it's not genetics that matter, It's epigenetics. It's your lifestyle. And I realized that very early on. I can remember over 20 years ago starting to ask every patient, what's your home program look like? What are you doing at home?
Right.
You can't just come in here 3 times a week and throw it on us. That's not what we're here for. We want to, and so became DRESS: diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, and supplements. Now we could do a whole 2 hours just on the stress
Yes.
reduction.
Uh-huh.
But DRESS it's the FDN practitioner formula for success, dress for health success. And it's funny because there was a book in the 70s about dress for health success. If you went back and looked at it and dressed that way today, you'd be considered a clown. But it was good back then, the big wide ties and all this stuff.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, I had that book. But dress for health success is how you live from the time you get up in the morning to the time you go to bed, and even in between how you sleep. Diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, supplementation. It also makes it very easy to be a health coach and manage that person. So in our world, we assess all the healing opportunities. You got to run some labs and do some intake, get to know the person. Then you can correlate those lab results with the person. In other words, clinical correlation, all these things going on. You're finally the first person that ever explained to someone why they feel so crappy all the time.
Right.
When they might have even been told there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah.
From standard blood work. And that's,
your labs are fine. Your labs are
you
fine.
look okay. Come back when you're sick, like when
Right.
you're really bad. And in the meantime, here's a chill pill.
Yeah.
So no, we find healing opportunities, especially in those cases. And then you have to recommend and design the right protocol for that person. There's no one diet right for everyone.
Thank you.
Rest is highly individualized. Exercise is highly individualized. I'll tell you right now at 70, I can't do I had to quit kickboxing. It was too hard on my hips. I have a torn labrum. You kind of there's a lot of stuff. So even
wear and tear.
Yeah, well-used body. So diet, individualized, rest, individualized, exercise, individualized. The stress reduction is, again, it's a whole conversation itself, but very quickly, it's mental, emotional, psycho-spiritual stress, what's going on in your head and your heart and your mind and things. There's physical trauma, like I've had a lot of from sports and motorcycles and things. And then there's the biochemical stressors. And where did I start? Environmental law, studying how bad the environment is for flora and fauna. It's bad for us too. So you have this whole world of stress reduction, and then the supplements are important because food just isn't the quality it used to be.
Yeah.
And they can be used therapeutically to support and stimulate and things like that. So DRESS, but only guided by full investigation of HIDDE. And that's our basic formula. We resolve metabolic chaos by getting people to live themselves out of the problems they've lived themselves into. And again, this works perfectly with medical, who work on the communicable and accidents and weirdo genetics, like total.
Right.
There are people with genetic defects and our sometimes missing parts. That's really we can't grow parts back, but that's our backyard. It's the wall you need your ladder on if you're going to take charge and live yourself out of it and live yourself into a really healthy, vibrant, and joyful life. The last thing I'll say about doctors and us, why we work so well together, doctors will save your life, and we'll put more vibrancy into it and the longevity and anti-aging that goes with it.
Yeah, which I love that you brought up. We're talking mostly about, and this was what drove your path, chronic illness and things like autoimmunity. But it's the same approach for up leveling and aging with full health. I didn't think I would live to see 55. And I probably wouldn't have wanted to if I had continued to decline anyway. Now I'm like, oh, the next few decades are going to be amazing. I always say, I want to live well until I'm done. And so this approach is a wellness approach. It doesn't really matter what you're looking for. If you think you feel well, this approach will help you feel better.
It's very true, Julie. That's an excellent point and a good place we could move on, and I'll come back anytime you guys want.
I would love it. I want to throw this in though, for anybody listening on audio that is not familiar with you, because you just mentioned that you're 70. Check out Reed, because you would not believe he was 70 if you met him in person. And that's what true wellness can be. It can be full life, even with wear and tear. Wear and tear is fair. You earned it.
Yes.
But
you got it honestly anyway.
Yeah. So sorry, I interrupted you because I had to throw that in.
Well, I enjoy speaking about this so much, but on a podcast, it's limited as to what you go into. The one thing we didn't cover is the science and how robust, like my program is, and what I had to learn in those 10 years, the anatomy, the physiology, the biochemistry is intense. And that's all in my course that I teach. So it's a real great refresher for physicians. From a lay perspective, it's quite unique, but it's a real education for health coaches and even nurses and the others who like to take my course and learn a whole methodology, way of thinking. And of course, it's a great business opportunity too. You can become an independent health entrepreneur by doing this. And there's no prerequisites except for that you're willing to do the work on yourself first.
Yep.
And that alone would be worth the price of admission. If you just got really healthy from it, wow. But the fact that you could turn around and help others as a hobby, just your family, friends, whatever, or as a profession, which is why I created the Association of FDN Professionals. My grads are so numerous. We've trained over 4,000 people.
Which is amazing. And in 50 countries, right?
And yeah, I didn't even
Probably
know some
more
countries.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was countries named all these. That's a country? That's a country? I thought that was a city somewhere. But most of the United States, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and United Kingdom. But we're all over because you can do this from anywhere. If you can get the labs shipped. Like here's a lab right here on my desk. Yep. I got to fill this one out.
I know that one.
Next week.
Yep.
So because I have every lab I've ever run in 20 years, and boy, can you track the and stuff. It's part of why of being healthy, I think. So I don't know. Maybe last word to our listeners today is start getting the data. You need data.
Yeah.
You can't just be told try this, try that. And physicians are getting data, but they're really not handing it over to you freely in most cases. You have to beg for it, demand it, and you want to start tracking it because guess what? You're going to change doctors, and the one you're seeing now doesn't know the one or even know what the results were 5 years ago. That's important information, and it's your information. It belongs to you, and so I recommend getting the data and making your decisions on it. And tracking it over time so you can see that you're on the right track.
I love that you brought that up, this idea of health autonomy, because for years, decades, that is the old system, is that the doctor has the answer and is going to fix you. And you already hit on it. If you don't change lifestyle and address all these lifestyle areas, the data is not going to do any good. But also, we're in this amazing age where information is available, and I have been told before, well, you can't have that. I'm like, it's my body. These are my labs, and then I get to know if something's changing. Can you touch on you mentioned, but a little deeper on the difference of if somebody has been told your labs are fine, your labs are normal. you know,
Yeah.
I won't get into the whole is it in your head and all, but the difference between the labs you run or FDN would run or that I run, how are they different? Because people always come up and they're like, oh, I've had so many labs done, down to like, oh,
Sure.
I had a heavy metals test and it was a blood test. Like there's just so much
Yes.
misinformation, and there
But
is a real difference in
yeah,
the information we can access.
well, there's functional tests would tell you how your body's working. And then there's other tests that like tell you what your food sensitivities are, or what your parasites and bacteria and funguses and viruses are, or what your metal toxic levels are and things. So you got functional, which is going to tell you how your adrenals or your hormones balance. How's your immune system working? Is it overactive or underactive? How's digestion working? How actually breaking down and absorbing food properly? You could be spending a lot of money on organic and all the good things, and it's not really being broken down and absorbed.
Right.
Then you could also look at the mucosal barrier, which is where the leaky gut, which is the kind of the parent of autoimmunity. And you can also see what stress is doing and how it's breaking your body down, how you're aging before your time. So the functional tests tell you, how things are working inside. And then there's other tests which is, again, they're usually done on the sounds like method. Sounds like heavy metals.
Right.
Let's test for those. And you might even find a couple and and then you might even look for the source of those things. You might find mineral imbalances too. You might, and be able to, try to adjust those. But the functional tests are sort of higher level. It's a hierarchy that you need to know about. And I think that's the real data. So with respect to the standard blood work that doctors use,
right,
it's too generalized. They're just, the ranges are so big. And where should you be? Now, because if the range is this big, maybe you're best functional, you do better here, someone else does better here in whatever that thing might be. But only when you get this far out of range, off camera.
Oh, yeah.
Now you have a problem. Okay, well, couldn't you have told me as
10 years ago before I,
if the range is like this and you were here, and now are you fine when you're right on that borderline? Are you really fine? No, you've lost function along the way. And so physicians typically don't track they just look, are you over the line or not?
Right. And I say that all the time. We talked about how rampant chronic illness is and how unhealthy our society is. And the labs you're getting at your doctor, if they're not flagged, that means you're average of a horribly unwell population. I don't want to be in the average of the current population versus what you're saying, the functional tests they're how is your body doing? And that's a huge missing piece. So I love that you said that. And
it's a good discussion. There's a book called Normal Blood Test Scores Aren't Good Enough by Ellen Cullen. If I have it right, something like that. Normal blood test scores aren't good enough. And so that's a beginning of understanding of what your physicians, when he only flags this and that, cholesterol and vitamin D, if they're even testing it,
and then each lab company has a different range because they see different kinds of populations. So it's
right. There's LabCorp and Quest, the two biggest referencing things. So that's standard, and it's not good enough to be normal. You need to be able to track where you're in the range, and before you get over the line.
Right.
And the other thing is, most physicians aren't sitting down for any length of time to explain what each one is. What are these markers? No, it's just this one's over the line, this one's under the line, and here's what you do about it. That's diagnosing and treating specific things. We would look at it more, we would call it functionally minded. But so that's the blood work. But then the saliva testing, urine testing, stool testing, hair tissue mineral analysis, and things like that, they're much more functional. And then there is the direct contributors to metabolic chaos testing, like parasites, bacteria, funguses, viruses. You have your food sensitivities, which we look at. Everyone has some. It's good to know what the good foods are and shop there and then make your meals out of that stuff instead, at least for a while. and there's more, but yeah, and it usually the reason why physicians don't do it, on one hand, is because it's not covered by insurance in many cases.
Right.
It's called an out of pocket. And physicians generally aren't going to, they're signing contracts with insurance companies to send them patients to stay within their scope of practice and the medical model, the algorithms that exist there that they're bound to. It's very quite limiting, actually. And so we're
Well, and then
outside
they
of
may
that.
not know
Yeah.
even what to do with the results too.
Well, they're not
Because-
trained in it. So that's
Yeah.
why I have a training program,
Yep.
by the way. But there's so much to uncover and to unpack here. I don't know.
We could have 10 conversations. Let's talk about the training program briefly so that listeners that are peaked and maybe they're on their healing journey and
Okay.
are in that place of like, ooh,
Yeah.
I either want to learn more, because go through the program, like you said, the one prerequisite is to work on yourself.
and want to help people.
Yeah.
Like and we are a bunch of do-gooders, we want to help people, but we want to work on ourselves. That was what inspired me in the beginning was, hey, I see what's happening to the flora, fauna.
Right.
What about me? What about us? And what about me? I didn't want something sneaking up on me. And so I switched jobs. And as you know, I ran a lot of labs, and now I teach a course in it. And what people would learn is how the dominoes fall. How it starts with stress. We look at, we do a saliva test of the stress hormones, cortisol, DHA. We see people are in a breakdown state. They're in a catabolic state. Their bodies are breaking down. Well, the next thing, it's due to stress, various kinds.
Yeah.
Your body doesn't care what kind of stress it is, mental, emotional, physical, chemical. It reacts with out of balance.
Right.
And so the next thing to go in this dominoes is the sex hormones, your estrogen, your progesterone, your periods get funny, your menopause comes early, you get infertile, and all these issues around the sex hormones. And for men, it's a little different, but then the next thing to fall, believe it or not, is usually the immune system. So digestion becomes poor because the gut is a big part of your immune system. Matter of fact, it's most of your immune system. And so we see secretory IgA going down due to chronic stress. And then if your secretory IgA is down, that's something in your gut to protect you from bugs. Well, if it's low, big bugs come along,
Yeah.
and they start to reside. You're a good host for them. This is why we say the bugs aren't the problem; it's the host.
Right.
It's the environment. So stress, sex hormone imbalances, immune system problems. Then you get this what's called a dysbiosis. You're not able to you have good bad flora issues, and you're not able to break down food properly. Now you have a malnourishment issue, even if you're eating great food. Your assimilation of nutrients into the body. And from there it gets worse. These bigger, badder bugs, I think is the medical term. The bigger, badder bugs, they can ruin the lining of the gut, along with chemicals and foods you shouldn't be eating and
Medications, like all,
drugs. Excuse me. And so now we get permeability of the lining of the gut.
Oh, then we get autoimmunity.
Well, in succession, the downward spiral and the dominoes would fall such that the liver would get congested, because everything goes through the portal veins from the stomach, from the small intestines into the liver. Doesn't get directly delivered into the body, except some fats that go through the lacteals and the villi. But you get this. This is where the science, anatomy, physiology becomes really important to understand this downward spiral. So that's what we teach, is how all the dominoes are falling. And you could point to people where they're at in that progression. And then you can teach them how to heal and recover and restore back to normal function. That would be the goal anyway. And we don't overpromise anything, but very reasonably expect people who are then, once we figure out all the malfunctions and the influences, the epigenetic factors, then you can live yourself out of that. We can give you the right diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction. That could be getting rid of foods, handling the bugs, a lot of things, and supplementation becomes very important. But I would say the overriding methodology includes it's the person taking charge, not me taking charge. It's like,
Yes.
this is the data. It's your data. It's your saliva, your blood, your urine, your stool, your
Yep.
hair, whatever we're analyzing. And then, and so it's you get to control the outcome. I can't control the outcomes. But that's where the health coaching comes in. And I think it's a good point to to summarize is that
Mhm.
yes, I can run all the labs. Yes, I can correlate it directly with why you feel so crappy.
Right.
And you will understand and know, wow, no one ever showed me this before. And we'll even design the custom dress program together, individualize that. But then what?
Right.
Do I send you on your way?
It's the how do
And
you
say,
do it?
hey, good luck with that. See you in
Yep.
3 months. You better have lost 20 pounds and have more energy and clear thinking and all that. No, you coach. You have
Yeah.
regular follow-ups with someone who knows why you're doing this, understands you as a person, and can help keep you on track and motivated. And retesting as needed, and correcting course.
Yeah.
Because the course corrections is the real heavy burden of the health coach to help you correct because things don't always go exactly the way they're laid out. Like sometimes it does, but it's like sailing a ship. My
Right.
dad, we grew up on the Great Lakes, so
Nice.
we sailed. My dad had a
Sailing this
sailboat.
afternoon.
Fantastic. Yeah, my uncle was a commodore of a yacht club, and so there's no power boating to health. We
No.
call those
I
guys the
love that.
stake potters. It's a lot of zigzag and a lot of tacking and coming about and heading up, falling off, and all the sailor terms that actually apply. You correct course. There's wind in the sails in your life. There's waves slapping up against the bow, trying to push you off course. There's currents under the water. And everyone has a different size hull, keel, rudder,
Yeah.
everything.
Well, and we're never done, right? It's not like, oh, this is working and maybe this isn't exactly what I need to be doing in 10 years.
That's a fantastic point. There's no one at the top of the stairs.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know a perfectly healthy person.
Mm-mm.
And
So,
I know a lot of people, and this is what they've done their entire lives, and everyone can pick something to work on.
yeah. Yeah. So the program itself, I mean, it sounds like it's so rich and so
It's
dense.
robust. It's robust.
It is robust, but
Yeah.
how long is the program?
I could teach you what took me 10 years to figure out
Yeah.
in 10 months or less, because it's self-paced. So teach you what I learned in 10 years and have learned since in 10 months or less. And if you go to that URL I gave you,
Yep.
um, uh,
fdntraining.com/autoimmunity.
Yep, be a great thing. We have a free gift for our listeners and direction and information and things like that, Julie. So
Wonderful,
love,
which is very
love to
generous.
welcome
Thank you.
some folks. Yeah.
Yeah. I can encourage, wherever you are in your healing journey, at least go check it out because
Thank you.
whether it's for your personal healing or you're at that place where you're already thinking of paying it forward and helping create change, Reed you've done what we dream about, right? Like I love helping people, and you actually stepped up and created a scale where you shifted from, working directly with clients to teaching practitioners and whomever is interested in learning and healing, and that is how we really create change. So really
Yes.
grateful for the work that you're putting out there.
Yeah, there's an evolution in place.
Yes.
Again, I saw alternative. I mean, some people thought we were kind of quacky.
I'm sure. Well, some people probably still do too.
Still do. Yeah.
So-
But I've seen that alternative go to complementary and integrate.
Yeah.
Why? Because it works.
Yeah.
and it became integrative, and now it's functional medicine. And it's still going to evolve where everyone has a health coach.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Now's the point where, because I promised I'd let you go on time today, which is very hard for me because I have so many things to talk to you about. So we'll pull you we'll pull you back in down the road to talk a little more. But this is the point listeners they know to listen for, which is, and this can be anything under the sun, Reed. What is one step listeners can take today to start to improve their health?
Oh, I would say get up in the morning and drink a big glass of water, purified water, and get into a state of mind that's grateful. We actually talked about this a little bit before the recording started. Like, I get up every day and decide to be happy, that this is going to be a good day. And look, I live in Southern California. So when I look outside, I see a lot of sunshine and blue skies. But even when I don't, you carry the sunshine with you. And I would say start there with your point of view, and have a cup that is half full. And maybe one day it will runneth over.
Yes, I love it. So important. And that will expedite all the other healing work. Just really, everything else works faster, better. So beautiful contribution.
Yes, well, good job, Julie. I want to commend you for all the fantastic work you're doing and for putting these things together. And you're doing wonderful. I appreciate and I'm honored to be here.
Thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure, and you've really given us some wonderful gold today.
Thank you.
Thanks. For everyone listening, remember you can get those transcripts and show notes by visiting inspiredliving.show. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I will see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity. Did you enjoy this episode? Please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to get a transcript of this and every other episode, just head on over to inspiredliving.show or click on the link in this episode's description. There, you can also find everything we discussed in this episode, including links and information about our guest. You can even send in your questions to be answered by Julie in a future episode. That's inspiredliving.show. Until next time, this is Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, helping you take your power back.